You know, one of the best things about these tea parties is you get to meet new people and make new friends, and this next guy we've got coming up, I am so happy to be able to call Mike a friend. We've gotten together several times. I want to say a little bit about Mike. Mike served in Congress from 2005 to 2007, where he received a 92% rating from the American Conservative Union. Mike owns Sodrel truck lines as well as the Free Enterprise System, which is a line of motor coaches and buses. Mike employs upwards of 800 people. So in some people's line of thinking, Mike's a bad guy. Anyway, Mike is the author of Citizen Sheep, Government Shepherds. Mike, do you have some of those books here today? Mike's got a few of these books. I urge you to read it. I've read it, and it's very good reading. And one thing I want to say about Mike, not only is he a businessman, but when Mike came and spoke at our first tea party, he gave a real nice speech about the Constitution. And he walked by me when he was done. He looked at me and he said, "Did I do okay?" And I thought, my gosh, here's a congressman, a businessman that employs a lot of people, an author, and he looks at me and says, "Did I do okay?" You know what that says to me? Mike Sodrel's a humble man, and Mike Sodrel's a good man. Unfortunately, I was really pulling for Mike in the congressional election, but again, Mike's a humble man. Mike's a businessman. He's not an arrogant man and a lawyer, so maybe that's what caught up with him. But anyway, again, I'm really proud to have Mike here. I'm proud to call him a good friend, and I think you're going to like what he has to say.
Thank you all. You know, I'd love to stand up here and tell you a funny story, kind of get you loosened up, but there's not a whole lot funny going on these days.
Congress is funny.
Yeah, Congress. I called Rick Roos. He said, "Well, we're in a tent." He said, kind of a revival meeting. I said, "Well, that'll fit pretty good with my remarks this morning." You know, I'm a tolerant guy. I hope you're tolerant people. If you're a conservative person, you have one definition of what it means to be tolerant. If you're a liberal, you have a different definition of the word tolerant. The conservative uses the dictionary definition. If you look it up, it means to put up with. As in, your body can tolerate certain medicines. A liberal believes the word tolerate means to approve of or promote. I put up with a lot of things I don't approve of, and I'm certainly not going to promote. Many conservatives are afraid to speak up about the moral decay in America for fear of being accused of being intolerant. They don't want to be called bigots or worse by their liberal neighbors and liberals in the media. Fortunately, our American revolutionaries weren't afraid to speak their minds. The founders of this great nation held some strong opinions about God and country, and I'd like to share with you this morning some of those thoughts and also my perspective about the relationship between Christianity and the American Republic. And you will notice I said republic, not democracy.
That's right.
You know, our president said recently we were not a Christian nation. So I did some checking to see what the founders had to say on the subject. You probably remember the famous saying by Patrick Henry when he said, "I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death." Most people had heard that remark as they went through school. But in 1765, Patrick Henry in the Virginia House of Burgesses said, quote, "It cannot be emphasized too clearly and too often that this nation was founded not by religionists, but by Christians. Not on religion, but on the gospel of Jesus Christ." He continued, now keep in mind this is in the Virginia House of Burgesses where he's making these remarks. He continued that peoples of other faith, he said, "For this reason, peoples of other faith have been offered asylum prosperity, and freedom of worship here. President George Washington said flatly, quote, "It is impossible to rightly govern a nation without God in the Bible."
Right.
He was speaking, of course, of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the Christian Bible.
Right.
At the Constitutional Convention, 1787, Ben Franklin said, quote, "God governs in the affairs of man, and if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without his aid? We have been assured in the sacred writings that except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain who build it." I firmly believe this. I also believe that without his concurring aid, we shall succeed in this political building no better than the builders of Babel. Thomas Jefferson said, quote, "I am a real Christian, that is to say, a disciple of Jesus." Long before the Red Study Bibles came out, Jefferson went through the Bible and took out everything that was attributable to Christ. It's commonly called the Jefferson Bible. All it contains was the teachings of Jesus. He took everything else out. It was passed out to new members of Congress for over 50 years, from 1904 to 1957. Might serve us well if they'd be passing them out today. I have one in my library. Then we have James Madison, our fourth president. He co-authored the Federalist Papers, for those of you that have read them or familiar with them, with John Jay and Alexander Hamilton. He's often called the author of the U.S. Constitution because he did most of the writing. He said, quote, "We have staked the whole future of American civilization not on the power of government, far from it. We've staked the future of all our political institutions upon our capacity to sustain ourselves according to the 10 Commandments of God." That would be the very same 10 Commandments that are currently barred from public display.
Right.
So far, we've heard from a couple of American patriots and 3 of our first 4 presidents on the subject of God and country. Before leaving the founders, I'd like to leave you with a couple of more quotes. Keep in mind, these are not people that just happened to live at the time of the American Revolution. These are people that were critical to the founding of America, to the writing of the Declaration of Independence, to prosecuting the Revolutionary War, to writing the U.S. Constitution. I mean, these were the shakers and movers of our time, their time. George Washington was the presiding officer at the Constitutional Convention, our first president and first commander-in-chief. He said, "Let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Reason and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in exclusion of religious principle." Basically goes back to when he said you can't rightly govern a nation without God in the Bible. Next quote comes from John Adams, Washington's vice president, author of the Massachusetts State Constitution and our second president. He said, "Our Constitution was designed only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to govern any other." And my question after I read that was, why would he say that our Constitution couldn't effectively govern an amoral people who lacked faith in God? That being the reverse of what he said. Well, the founders understood something that we've lost sight of today. There are 2 definitions to the term self-government. Most people think of we the people in regard that we govern ourselves collectively in accordance with the United States Constitution. But that's not the self-government that Washington and Madison and Jefferson and Adams were talking about. They were talking about we the people would govern ourselves individually in accordance with the Judeo-Christian tradition. These were people that understood that for collective self-government to work, government of the self was essential. A people who are to be given maximum individual liberty is a people that has to take maximum individual responsibility. They have to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because it's against the law to do otherwise. In our American Republic, church and state are indeed separate, but they are dependent on one another. The church depends on the state to defend its right to exist. The state depends on the church for the moral training of its citizens. As President Madison once said, if men were angels, we'd have no need of government.
Right.
Thou shalt not steal is a moral imperative. Grand theft auto is a civil crime. An individual with an active spiritual life and a well-developed conscience needs little government supervision or intervention. Will Rogers once said, people who complain about the quality of their politicians need to understand you can't dip clear water out of a muddy stream. It is the mission of the church to make sure the water's running clear.
Right, right.